Before we begin this unforgettable tale of survival, resilience, and raw human dominance, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you love powerful sci-fi stories where humanity flips the script. Now settle in, this one's going to claw its way under your skin. It wasn't the fireball in the sky that killed most of them. It was the silence that came after. Silence on a planet that should never have been quiet. The science vessel Everreach was torn apart when it hit Dralax 9's upper atmosphere at a slant no escape pod could correct. The ground rose up in a bone-snapping sprint, a jungle of black spires and ash-colored vines waiting like an open mouth. Emergency protocol meant little on a death world where gravity refused to yield and oxygen came in acidic flavors. The wreckage steamed and hissed beneath a rust-colored sky. Scorch marks stretched across splintered terrain like scars on ancient flesh. Inside the broken crescent of hull plating, a limp human body bled into the soil. Sergeant Callan Voss didn't wake at first. His breath came in ragged intervals. His left leg was torn open below the knee and bent at an angle that promised a long and screaming death. He didn't scream. Not even when his eyes fluttered open and saw nothing but crimson smoke and shadows moving in it. 20 meters away, 4 alien crew members crouched behind what was left of the engineering bulkhead. None of them dared move toward him. "He won't survive the hour," the Mikar navigator whispered. Yertle's frilled throat pulsed nervously, his eyes blinking independently as he scanned the perimeter for motion. Humans aren't built for this. Sorn, the skeletal tech officer from the glass-skinned Dravari, adjusted what was left of his comlink. The crash ruined all short-range transmitters. Long-range beacons are fried. We're blind. Trapped. Do you really think that primitive is our best hope? Velthari, a violet-skinned Valari xenobiologist, stared through the twisted metal toward the fallen human. Her long fingers trembled slightly, not from fear but calculation. You've read the same profiles I have. What humans lack in durability they make up for in some terrifying instinct. Earth is categorized as a Class 4 hostile environment. They evolved through starvation and ice and fire. They weren't born for comfort like we were. He's already dying, Sorn scoffed. Internal bleeding. That's not instinct. That's biology catching up. The fourth, a massive Krav warrior named Gresh, cracked his 3-fingered knuckles and shook his horned head. This one's soft. I saw him sleep through 3 drills. If he's what Earth sent, then Earth is as weak as the rest. Velthari didn't respond. Her gaze lingered on the rising steam, on the way the wind bent unnaturally just beyond the crash zone. Dralax 9 wasn't just hostile, it was wrong. It adapted faster than any topography she'd studied. The vines already twitched toward warmth. The dirt pulsed as if breathing. She activated her recorder and spoke into it softly. Velthari field notes. Day 1. 4 known survivors. Dralaxian atmosphere is hypertoxic to at least 2 species on board. We estimate survivability at less than 1 standard day. Correction. 3 survivors with functional autonomy. The human has not moved. As if on cue, Callan Voss twitched. His eyes snapped open. The pupils adjusted rapidly, dilating, then narrowing. He didn't sit up. He lay still for 12 seconds, counting something. Then he reached for a shard of metal beside him and used it to drag himself to a standing position. He's awake, Yertle hissed. By the stars, that's not possible. Gresh narrowed his eyes. Watch. He'll collapse. But he didn't. Voss bit down on a strap torn from the emergency rig and cinched it around his thigh. No hesitation. He made no sound. The bone crunched beneath pressure, forced back into place with a sickening pop. Then he limped forward into the jungle. Away from the ship. Away from them. Is he leaving us? Sorn muttered. No, Velthari said, her voice quieter now. He's hunting. By nightfall the cold came. Not the cold of wind or weather, but of presence. Like the world itself had taken notice of their movement and decided to test its new playthings. Predators emerged as shadows without form, but with eyes that blinked just beyond reach. Shrill howls spiraled through the jungle canopy, and the ground itself seemed to slither with unseen intention. Gresh posted himself at the only remaining hatch with a cracked plasma spear. Sorn tried rebooting the sensors with 1 functional lens. Yertle coiled himself into a fetal shape and whimpered under an emergency blanket. Only Velthari kept her eyes on the blackness outside, searching for movement, waiting for a scream that never came. Voss did not return. Midway through the night something growled. Not near them. Near the tree line. A death cry followed. Then silence again. He's dead, Yertle whispered. One of them got him. They smell blood. That's what they do. Gresh didn't answer. His fingers tightened around his weapon. His species knew fear, though they never spoke of it. But this silence was wrong. Predators bragged with noise. This was strategy. Sometime before dawn, the sky turned a shade of violet gray. Acidic dew clung to the hull. Something wet landed on the broken viewport, and for a moment they thought it was rain. Until Valkyrie touched it. Blood, she said softly. The Krav leaned over and sniffed. Not his. When the first light broke through the toxic clouds, a figure emerged from the mist. Shirtless, skin darkened by mud and alien ichor, Voss moved with the posture of something not quite feral, not quite man. His eyes were sharp, awake, unblinking. Strapped to his back were bones lashed into a crude harness. Around his waist, a belt of sharpened fragments. And in his hands, the dripping severed head of a raptor-like predator with spined jaws and double-jointed limbs. He walked up to the broken hull and dropped it at Gresh's feet. They hunt in packs, he said. His voice was coarse but calm. This was the scout. I marked its trail. They'll circle again tonight. The Krav stared at the head. Then at Voss. Then back to the jungle. You were injured. I adapted. Sorn looked like he'd swallowed his own tongue. You were unarmed. Voss shrugged. Not everything on Earth is tech. Valkyrie stepped forward, cautiously. We assumed you wouldn't make it through the night. You assumed wrong. He crouched beside the fireless pit they'd tried to ignite and began arranging stones in a pattern none of them recognized. What are you doing now? Yertle asked, voice barely above a squeak. Setting traps, Voss said. You stay inside today. Tonight they're coming again. Only next time they won't be curious. He looked each of them in the eye. No arrogance. No invitation. Just a soldier delivering facts. And if any of you still think I'm the weak one, he added, pulling a black fong from his forearm and tossing it beside the predator's skull, you're free to take the next watch. He turned and disappeared back into the trees as silent as he came. Valkyrie's recorder clicked on. Field notes update. The human not only survived, but has demonstrated advanced situational adaptation, predator tracking and resourceful weaponization. I believe the stories are true. Earth doesn't produce survivors. It produces something else. Gresh bent and picked up the severed head, studying it in silence. No, he muttered. Earth produces kings. And out in the jungle, beneath the rising twin suns, Callan Voss stood still between two branches, letting the wind carry his scent in the wrong direction. He counted 6 heartbeats in the brush. None of them human. He smiled. It was going to be a long night. And he was ready. The second night began with no warning. No calls from the treetops. No shifting mist or thudding paws. Just the thick, breathless quiet of a world about to split open. And in that silence, 5 beings stood surrounded by fireless stones, wondering which of them would see the next sunrise. Callan Voss had returned an hour before sundown. Not to eat. Not to speak. Just to watch. His body, still raw and bandaged in strips of woven plant fibers, didn't betray fatigue. He moved like something carved from the earth itself. Each step was purposeful. His eyes never lingered. His hands never rested. Yertle had started twitching again, his chitin clicking against the alloy floor in a rapid beat of nerves. They're coming, he whispered, clutching a shard of metal as though it were enchanted. I can hear them. The trees, they don't move the same anymore. They're already here, Voss said without looking at him. He knelt at the edge of the perimeter, dragging a clawed footprint through the dirt. Smells wrong. Tracks are shallow. The raptors are testing distance, not hunting yet. They're intelligent? Valkyrie asked. They're organized, he corrected. Which means one of two things. They've done this before. Or something smarter is driving them. Sorn fumbled with his half-melted datapad, the screen flickering as he swiped through corrupted readings. Nothing in the scans shows pack coordination. These things shouldn't be more than instinctual predators. That's your problem, Voss muttered. You keep expecting everything to follow your text rules. Out here, the jungle doesn't read diagnostics. It learns by blood. Gresh, spear resting across his shoulders, narrowed his yellow eyes. You speak like this is familiar. Voss stood slowly and looked toward the trees. Because it is. Nobody asked what that meant. Not yet. But in the way Valkyrie tilted her head, in the way even Sorn stopped tapping and just listened, there was something shifting. A reluctant curiosity. A slow blooming respect. When dusk slipped into full night, Voss extinguished what little light remained and handed each of them a length of vine, nodded at exact intervals. If you hear 3 tugs, he said, drop flat. If you hear two, run toward the center. If I don't send any tugs, you hold your breath and pray they pass you by. Yertle clutched the vine like a lifeline. And what if they don't? Then we see what breaks first. Their teeth. Or your nerves. Velthury smiled faintly. You say that like you've watched both. I have. The first creature came just before midnight. It didn't scream. It simply appeared between the vines like it had always been there, pale skin stretched tight across a dozen limbs, eyes blinkless and too wide for its face. It crawled low, careful, sniffing at the boundary where Voss had packed layers of ash and alien urine. Then something whistled through the air, and a spike made of bone drove through its neck, pinning it to the dirt with a dull thud. The others flinched. Voss didn't. Scouts again, he said, retreating from the treeline with another bone spear in hand. They're testing outer traps. If they find a gap, they'll swarm. Soren looked toward the jungle, voice tight. They're coordinated. This is behavior. Planning. That shouldn't be possible. Everything plans when it's hungry enough, Voss said. Gresh stepped forward. Let them come. We're armed. We stand. We fight. No, Voss said calmly. You stand, you die. You fight their way, they win. Out here you don't charge. You endure. A second creature tried a different angle, slithering low under fallen bark. It triggered a wire-thin vine across its midsection, which set off a weighted net of sharpened bones. The trap didn't kill it cleanly. The thing thrashed and howled, blood spraying in arcs against the trees. The forest answered back. It was not a howl. It was a signal. The next wave came fast. Too fast. 3, then 5, then 7 sets of eyes blinked in from the brush. One leapt and was caught midair by a swinging mace of scavenged steel. Another darted past a trap and nearly reached the camp center before Voss appeared from nowhere and drove a spike through its gut. He didn't roar. He didn't grunt. He killed like breathing. Gresh backed up, flanked by Soren and Yertle, all weapons drawn, faces pale. Velthury tried to call out a warning but was cut short when a creature launched from above, diving off a branch aimed for her spine. Before it could reach her, a hand caught it mid-flight and drove its skull into the side of the wrecked hull with a wet crack. Voss shoved the carcass aside and looked at her. You're thinking too loud, he said. I wasn't. They smell thought, doubt, fear. That's what they hunt. He turned back toward the treeline. They've stopped testing. The next one leads the pack. Gresh tightened his grip. Then we kill it. No, Voss replied. We starve it. The waiting dragged. The creatures circled. One of them called out, not a roar but something more guttural, a wet scrape across the back of the mind. Yertle fell to his knees, clutching his head. It's in my mind. It's screaming inside me. Soren dropped beside him. Neural feedback, some kind of psionic pulse. No, Velthury whispered. It's dominance. From the trees emerged the largest of them, limbs longer than Voss was tall, eyes the size of fists, black and glistening. Its claws scraped the ground in patterns. Not random. A message. It did not charge. It stood. And waited. Velthury leaned forward. It's challenging him. No, Gresh muttered. It's measuring him. Voss stepped into the clearing, mud-covered, eyes locked on the beast. He dropped his last weapon. Unarmed. Exposed. What are you doing? Soren hissed. Being human, Voss said softly. The creature moved first. Fast. A blur of muscle and bone. Its arms came down like axes. Voss dodged left, then forward. He let it strike, used the momentum to roll beneath its gut, and drove both fists into a soft point behind its ribs. It screamed. Buckled. Spun. Voss leapt to his feet, grabbed a shard from the carcass of a fallen scout, and jammed it into the creature's eye. It shrieked again. But this time, the sound that followed wasn't aggression. It was retreat. The others paused. Then scattered. Silence returned. Not calm. But absence. An acknowledgement. The jungle had decided. Voss stood alone, panting, one arm hanging useless, blood slicked across his chest. He didn't look victorious. He looked furious. Velthury approached cautiously. They fled. You beat it. No, Voss said. I didn't beat it. I made it bleed. He turned to the others, each frozen in their own way. Gresh still had his weapon raised. Soren's hand trembled over a control that no longer worked. Yertle was crying again. Voss knelt, picked up a broken bone blade and tossed it to the center of their circle. You want to live? He said. Start learning what hurts them. Velthury met his eyes. They'll come back. Won't they? Of course, he said. But now they know. Something out here bites back. Soren sat heavily, staring at the dying embers of a trap's acid burn. What are you really, Voss? The human turned slowly. No expression. No pride. Earth's not gentle, he said. We learned to stop begging the dark to go away. We started watching it. Waiting for it. Then we became it. Above them the trees settled. The wind changed. The jungle exhaled. And somewhere deep beyond the line of sight, something else began to move. Something larger. Something not yet afraid. But the human no longer cared. He sharpened his blade. And smiled. By the third morning the jungle had learned. The creatures no longer tested the camp perimeter. They didn't howl. Didn't scrape bark or rustle leaves. The death world that once hunted in hunger now waited in caution, letting its silence ask the questions it used to scream. Callan Voss moved through the foliage like a shadow born to it. What had begun as survival had become ritual. Patrol the lines. Check the traps. Note the scat, the tracks, the new shifts in wind. The jungle was alive but no longer unknown. It had rhythm. And rhythm could be broken. Inside the ruined ship, the others had begun to change. Not quickly. Not with ease. But enough. Gresh now stood morning watch with his plasma spear at the ready, though he used it more like a staff than a weapon, trusting the traps more than its hiss. Yertle no longer wept through the night. His third eye had begun scanning independently, tracking motion even while his primary eyes slept. Veltri had stopped recording logs. Her datapad now held sketches instead. Bone arrangements. Trap schematics. Predator anatomies. Pages stained with blood and ink. Even Sorn had altered, though less willingly. He still grumbled, still doubted, but he'd gutted 2 of Voss's kills and woven a crude harness from sinew and plating. It hung lopsided but held his tools in place. Tools he now wielded with trembling confidence. They followed Voss's example even if none said it aloud. Not out of admiration. Out of survival. Something about him had transcended the boundary between prey and predator. He wasn't leading them. He was forcing the jungle to allow them. But the quiet wouldn't last. Late that afternoon, Veltri returned from water collection with her jaw tight and pupils narrowed. Tracks, she said, dropping to a crouch beside Voss. Big. Plot. 4 sets. Moving together. But spaced like. He knelt beside her, examining the imprints. His fingers moved through the dirt slowly. Not a pack. She nodded. A formation. He stood slowly and scanned the treeline. Not hunters. Scouts. Sent by something smarter. Yertle chirped low and agitated from behind them. We already killed their apex. What else could be higher? Something that didn't challenge me head-on, Voss said. Sorn hissed a breath. You think there's a hierarchy among these things? I think everything with teeth has a chain of command. And the ones who bite last usually bite hardest. That night Voss didn't set traps. Instead, he gathered the others and began teaching them in earnest. He spoke not like a commander but like a fire-teaching flame. You've lasted this long because they hesitated, he said. Now they won't. Now they've decided. This planet has stopped watching. It's preparing to strike. Gresh looked up. Then we strike first. No, Voss said. We prepare to bleed longer than they can bite. He drew lines in the dirt. Defense zones. Funnel points. Fallback positions. Each mark placed with intent honed through a lifetime of harsh instruction. He told them of Earth's black zones, of survival tournaments held in wastelands where cold alone could crush lungs. He described sand that could cut through armor with the right wind. Jungles filled with poison-spitting lizards, and nights so dark you could hear yourself forget what light felt like. He told them not to be brave. Brave got people killed. Smart got them through the night. By the time the stars blinked overhead, every one of them had memorized a retreat path. Every one of them had made peace with death. What none of them had prepared for was the voice. It came just before midnight. Not a growl. Not a call. A voice. Words. Not human. But language. Voss froze. The others stared at him wide-eyed. It spoke, Yertle whispered. It spoke. It mimicked, Voss corrected. Probably heard us talking. Its echoing structure. Baiting us. The voice returned, closer. Man. Come. Man blood. Man fight. Veltri stepped closer to Voss. It knows you. I bled its lesser. Now it wants to see what else I'll spill. Gresh snarled. Then give it what it came for. No, Voss said jaw tight. It's not trying to fight. It's trying to divide. The jungle rippled. Shapes moved at the edge of firelight. Dozens. Not the lean, clawed beasts from before. These were larger. Heavier. Armor like skin. Faces less like animals, more like something caught halfway between thought and instinct. They carried bones sharpened into weapons. Tools. Clubs. Shields. Even Sorn gasped. They've evolved, even since last contact. They've been evolving long before us, Voss said. We just showed them what fear smells like. The largest of them emerged from the dark. It was at least 8 feet tall, cloaked in the hides of the dead, with a necklace of claws that still dripped blood. Its eyes locked on Voss and did not blink. Man. Come. Voss didn't move. Challenge? The thing rasped. Velthary whispered, a duel. Gresh's grip tightened. Let me? No, Voss said. He stepped forward. Stripped down to his waist, dirt caked into every crease of his skin, he walked toward the creature as if it were nothing more than a fact to be proven wrong. The creature roared, a sound that shook the vines from trees. Voss didn't roar back. He exhaled, then lunged. The fight was not elegant. It was not honorable. It was violent and ugly and fast. The creature struck with brute force. Voss ducked, spun, and slammed his elbow into a soft joint just beneath its ribs. The thing staggered, surprised. He did not give it time to think. He drove his heel into its knee, forced it to stumble, then wrapped an arm around its throat. They crashed together into the dirt. For a moment, it looked like the creature might overpower him. Then Voss bit down into its ear and ripped. The creature howled, lashed out, caught Voss's jaw with a backhand that sent him sprawling. Blood spattered the leaves. The aliens gasped, but Voss laughed. Oh, Pharaoh. Gleeful. He spit out a chunk of flesh. You're bleeding, the creature said in its broken mimic. Voss grinned. So are you. Then he drove a sharpened bone shard up through the creature's throat. It choked, collapsed, and didn't move again. The others watched, frozen. The creatures around them shifted, eyes locked on their fallen alpha. Then, slowly, without roar or warning, they bowed. One by one. To Voss. The jungle, for the first time, did not growl. It waited. Gresh stepped forward and muttered, You didn't just beat it. You claimed its place. Voss wiped the blood from his face and looked toward the trees. They sent their apex. He turned back to the others, eyes bright and strange. Now they wait to see if I lead. Yertle stepped back. You're not going to. Of course I am, Voss said. The words came calmly as if he'd known this would happen. I'm not surviving this planet. I'm taming it. And for the first time since the crash, none of the survivors doubted that he could. By the 7th day the jungle stopped trying to kill them. No more stalkers in the trees. No poison-thorned roots twisting up through sleeping mats. The undergrowth grew dense around the camp but never encroached. The predators passed silently in the night without breaking leaves or testing the traps. The world still breathed, but it breathed around them now. Something had shifted. The survivors felt it first in the way the wind no longer howled. Then in how their dreams changed. Less screaming. More stillness. Callan Voss stood at the edge of the treeline, arms folded, his jaw covered in a fresh bruise from a training match with Gresh. The Krav warrior now sparred with him daily, no longer with arrogance, but with a desperate hunger to understand. Each movement Voss made was a lesson in calculated violence. Efficiency over style. Brutality over bravado. Behind them, Yertle worked to carve symbols into the side of the wreckage. Not art. Territory markings. He no longer trembled when he worked. His limbs moved with slow, precise focus. He'd stopped speaking in fear weeks ago. Velthary knelt beside a shallow pit where small bones simmered in heated water. The crude stew wasn't palatable by Alliance standards, but none of them cared. She had grown leaner, sharper. Her voice, once soft and scientific, now held command when she spoke. She no longer referred to Voss in her logs. She referred to him in doctrine. The Apex Code. She was writing a manual for the future, not just a record of survival. Sorn was the last to adapt. The tech officer still muttered to himself, still cursed the dead comms and unresponsive satellites. But he had wired 3 of Voss's bone traps into motion sensors using melted casing and stripped guidance modules. They now clicked softly in the wind like ticking teeth. Sorn understood them better each time one snapped shut. The ship was no longer a wreck. It was a fortress. Not elegant. Not advanced. But functional. Lethal. The jungle knew it. And respected it. Above them, the sky roiled with storm clouds, greenish-black and thick as poison gas. Lightning forked in unnatural directions. No rain fell. Only ash and static. Something in the planet stirred again, deeper than predators. Older than bone. A tension humming from the soil. Voss felt it before the others. His skin crawled where the air thickened. His heartbeat changed rhythm. Slower. Louder. His instincts, long burned into him by Earth's worst winters and worst wars, pulsed a single warning. The jungle wasn't done. That night the wind screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure. It slammed against the makeshift hull with a howl that shattered bone pots and threw ash into the fire. Trees bent at angles no bark should tolerate. Shapes moved through the outer mist, but not like before. Not hunting. Marching. Gresh and Velthary grabbed their weapons. Yertle climbed to the observation point, antennae twitching. Soren activated what few sensors remained. Nothing showed. Voss stepped into the center of the camp and waited. It didn't take long. A low vibration rolled beneath the ground, like thunder trapped under skin. The trees parted, not broken, not slashed. Asterisk pushed aside star. Something vast was coming. Something slow and patient and full of mind. They all saw it emerge. It wasn't a beast. Not entirely. It stood upright. Towering. 10 feet high at the shoulder, maybe more, with limbs that shimmered like volcanic glass and a face that held too many eyes. Bone armor lined its torso, stitched with sinew. From its back hung a cape of skulls, not trophies but symbols. And in its claws it carried a staff carved from a femur thicker than Voss's waist. Yertle choked out the word before anyone else could. Elder. The jungle's true apex. The one that didn't need to fight to rule. Voss stepped forward. The others tried to stop him, but he didn't speak. He walked through the camp's boundary alone, unarmed, unblinking, the way he had on that first night when nothing feared him yet. The elder waited. When Voss reached the circle of crushed earth where even the leaves refused to grow, it raised one claw and drove the staff into the ground. A deep boom echoed, one not of sound but command. Behind it, a dozen smaller creatures emerged, not scouts, not soldiers, asterisk witnesses star. The court of the jungle. Here for a verdict. The elder leaned forward. Its voice was a vibration, not a language, but Voss understood it all the same. You disrupted the order. He didn't flinch. You stole fear. He nodded. You must give it back. And then Voss spoke. Not loud. Not bold. But final. I gave you respect. You gave me blood. The elder growled. I offered you peace, Voss continued, and you tested it with bone. Now you want to talk. But only after you've lost too many mouths to speak with. The wind stilled. The jungle leaned closer. You don't own this world, Voss said. You were just the first to bleed for it. Behind him, the survivors formed a line. Not in protest. In unity. They carried no banners. No polished weapons. Just tools made from the things they'd killed. Proof of dominion. The elder straightened to its full height. The air grew tight. The stars blinked behind storm clouds. Lightning struck a tree 100 meters behind them and set the branches aflame. Still no one moved. The elder's eyes closed. Then opened. And it stepped back. One pace. Two. It bowed. A shallow incline of its massive head. Voss didn't smile. He turned his back on the elder and walked back to the camp, every step echoing with finality. The creatures vanished into the mist, swallowed by the storm. Gresh exhaled first. Then Velthary. Then the rest. None of them spoke. Not until they were sure Voss had sat back down at the fire. Yertle finally broke the silence. Was that surrender? No, Velthary said quietly. That was a treaty. Soren looked up from his corner. Then what are we now? Not guests, she said. Not prisoners. Something worse. Gresh looked at Voss. Neighbors, he muttered. Callan Voss stirred the embers with the end of a broken fong. His body still bore the cuts and bruises from days of survival, but none of them slowed him. He didn't look like a soldier anymore. Or a castaway. He looked like a thing carved by the world itself. Velthary stepped forward, kneeling beside him. You knew this would happen. I suspected. You weren't afraid? He shook his head. You really think we're safe now? He looked up at her. Safe? He said, voice low. There's no such thing on a world like this. He nodded toward the treeline. But there's understanding. And that's more than we had. From the edge of the jungle, a smaller predator, four-legged, with burn scars across its flank, crawled into the clearing. It stopped 3 meters from Voss and lay down. Not as a threat. As an offering. Voss reached out and scratched its jaw. The creature didn't move. Velthary's eyes widened. They sent you a watcher. He nodded. No. A witness. The fire cracked louder. Above them the storm passed. The wind returned to its natural rhythm. The jungle closed again but gently. Respectfully. Callan Voss sat back, his eyes still scanning the dark. The others slept. He didn't. Not because he feared an attack, but because something had to stand watch. And now something finally did. Not a beast. Not a god. Just a human. And that was enough. 3 weeks passed. The jungle obeyed. The watchers sent by the elder came nightly now. They didn't stalk or growl or bare teeth. They simply appeared, observed, and vanished. Sometimes alone. Sometimes in pairs. Sometimes with the broken bones of other creatures laid neatly at the camp's edge like tribute. The survivors, no, not survivors anymore, residents began to settle into the rhythm. They hunted without panic. They reinforced their perimeter not out of fear but out of habit. The wreckage had grown into something beyond a fortress. It was home now. Even Sorn had stopped checking the sky. Gresh sparred with Voss every morning without fail. Yertle had grown a thicker third carapace ridge, a sign of maturity his species rarely reached under stress. Velthury no longer recorded her logs on Alliance protocol. She encoded them in jungle glyphs and buried copies under marked trees. Peace had taken root. Which is why the sound of a human voice over a high-frequency Alliance channel was so impossibly out of place. The transmission cut through the dense canopy with the clarity of fire through silence. Every device Sorn had scrapped to keep warm suddenly blinked back to life, pinging with system reboots and uplink sync requests. The jungle paused. So did every heart in the camp. This is Commander Elias Drake of the ESS Gallowbird. We've received your crash signal. Recovery vessel inbound. You are not abandoned. Repeat. You are not abandoned. Sorn dropped to his knees, laughing. They found us. Velthury's hand trembled. They actually... No, Voss said. The camp went still. No. Gresh asked. What do you mean no? I disabled the beacon, Voss said calmly. Weeks ago. I smashed the transmitter's core. Sorn looked at him. Then how? They didn't find us, Voss said. They found me. Velthury stepped closer. Explain. Voss looked toward the jungle. The mist was thicker today. The watchers weren't here. Something about that unsettled him more than the voice in the sky. I didn't crash by accident, he said. They stared. Sorn rose slowly, disbelief in every line of his face. You mean, you knew? I knew Dralax 9 was no ordinary death world, Voss replied. But I didn't come to die here. I came to learn. To test a theory. Velthury's voice sharpened. What theory? That humans aren't alone, he said. That something out there evolved the same way we did. Not stronger. Not smarter. But meaner. Hungrier. More ruthless. And that if we could outlast it, we could outlive everything. Gresh took a step forward, fists clenched. You used us. I included you, Voss said. You chose to survive. I just didn't tell you what surviving meant. The ground trembled again. But not from the jungle. From above. A ship breached the clouds. Alliance markings, chrome-plated hull, a beast of steel and fire with weapons bristling from its underbelly. The Gallowbird. A flagship. A warship. And its guns were aimed straight at the jungle. They're not here to rescue us, Velthury whispered. No, Voss said. They're here to sterilize the planet. They believe it's hostile. They're following protocol. Gresh turned face wild. You knew they'd come like this? I warned them, Voss said. Months ago. If I didn't report back within a cycle, they'd assume the apex species here was a planetary threat. You told them? Velthury gasped. Voss's voice was low. I am their weapon. They didn't send me to survive. They sent me to provoke. Yertle made a sound somewhere between a scream and a moan. You're not just a soldier, Sorn whispered. You're bait. The first orbital cannon fired. The beam didn't strike the jungle. It struck the watchers. 3 of them, standing silently on a ridge, waiting for the treaty to hold. Gone. Flash boiled into ash. The jungle screamed. Not a sound, not an echo. Every leaf, every branch, every beast within 20 kilometers rose in a roar of fury. The sky turned black. The trees bent inward. And the elder reappeared. This time it did not wait for ceremony. It moved through the fire and wind like a god risen from betrayal. And it headed straight for Voss. Velthury stepped in front of him. No. You don't get to face it alone. Not anymore. I never should have faced it alone, Voss said quietly. Then he raised his hands. Empty. No weapons, he called out into the storm. No deception. The elder halted 5 meters away, surrounded by younger creatures bristling with rage. The air between them crackled with the kind of tension that precedes extinction. I lied to you, Voss said. I brought war to your home. And I'll pay for it. The elder raised a claw, but it did not strike. It waited. Voss turned to his people, his survivors, his unintended army, and nodded. You built something here, he said. Better than the Alliance ever will. Smarter. Tougher. More honest. If this world has room for predators like us, maybe it has room for something better. He stepped forward and knelt. I surrender. Not as a human, but as a mistake. The elder lowered its claw, turned, and walked away. One by one the others followed. The jungle retreated. The sky cleared. The gallowbird hovered in orbit, blind to what had just happened. No second shot came. Voss remained on his knees. Velthry approached and touched his shoulder. What happens now? He looked up at her. Now, he said, we teach the Alliance what it means to earn peace. Behind them the jungle waited. This time not in fear, but in invitation.